Let's bring in Trey Gowdy. He's former House Oversight Chairman and a Fox News contributor. Great to have you here today. Let me first start off by asking you, do you agree with the White House that it is untenable for the Speaker to just hold the articles of impeachment over at the House and never send them to the Senate?
Well, Dana, if he really is an existential threat to the Republic, if he really has committed conduct that should result in his removal from office, then why would you not go ahead and send it on to the Senate? I mean, the Constitution gives the House no role in deciding how this trial takes place. It is exclusively within the province of the Senate. So I think most of my fellow citizens will see through this. Let's hurry up and impeach him and then sit on the indictment for God knows how long. I think most people are smart enough to see through that.
So I think one of the things that she's saying is that the Senate has not proven, and Mitch McConnell hasn't proven, that it could be a fair trial. First, listen to Senator Durbin of Illinois.
I think they've gone too far. You know, how can they hold their hands up and say, I swear impartial justice, I'd like to sit at the manager's table with the president's team? You can't do that. They shouldn't have done that.
Well, but Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, he was also out and about this morning, actually, and this is what he had to say about that.
First, on the impartiality issue, do you think Chuck Schumer is impartial? Do you think Elizabeth Warren is impartial?
No.
Bernie Sanders is impartial? So let's quit the charade. This is a political exercise, a political exercise. All I'm asking of Schumer is that we treat Trump the same way we treated Clinton.
Trey, one of the problems, I think, in all of this is that the language is the same. So you have tried cases in courtrooms where that trial looks very different from what a Senate trial would look like.
I wish this were a judicial proceeding, but keep in mind, Dana, if it were, then Adam Schiff would not have been leading the investigation. 60 House Democrats would not have made up their minds before the first syllable of the Mueller report. I mean, you had Eric Swalwell investigating the president while he was trying to become the president. So you would never have that in a real judicial proceeding. I wish that it were like a judicial proceeding, but it's not. The jury has already made up its mind. Even Dick Durbin, who's now calling for impartiality, has already passed judgment on the credibility of the witnesses. He said the president's conduct was beneath the dignity of the office, and he was incredibly troubled by it. That does not sound like an impartial, objective, dispassionate juror. I mean, how many of the senators, how many members of the jury are actually running to take Donald Trump's job? You would never have that in a real judicial proceeding. So Mitch McConnell's right. This is a political trial, not a judicial trial. If it were a judicial trial, none of what's happened up to this point would have taken place.
In the meantime, we had the Horowitz report that he's the Inspector General of the Justice Department, very critical of the FBI and also putting in doubt the future of FISA and the FISA court. Take a listen to Lindsey Graham yesterday on that issue.
We're going to look long and hard at FISA abuse. We're going to pass laws to make sure this never happens again. Accountability will only be successful if somebody gets fired, and I'm looking at Christopher Wray to fire somebody at the FBI, and somebody needs to go to jail, and I'm looking at Durham to hold people criminally accountable for the laws they broke.
What do you think of what's going to happen to FISA, and do you think it's still a necessary tool for law enforcement?
I do think it's a necessary tool. I think the policies are only as good as the people implementing them. So what was it, 2018, that some House Republicans wrote the FISA court, and we also raised issues with the process. And, you know, the D.C. media said, isn't that cute? These crazy little House Republicans have a problem with FISA. Remember, Donald Trump, on the morning we were going to vote to reauthorize the surveillance program, sent out a very negative tweet, which required Pompeo to run to the White House and try to fix it. So the Republicans are already skittish about these surveillance programs. If the court and the media and the Democrats do not take Horowitz's report seriously, I mean, Lindsey Graham may be the most hawkish member of the Senate when it comes to national security. If he's troubled by it, then imagine where Rand Paul and some of the other Republicans are.
Before we let you go, let's get your thoughts about John Durham. So he's the U.S. attorney who is tasked with the overall report of how this whole Russia investigation began in the first place. So he doesn't just look at DOJ. He also looks across the board at the intelligence agencies and more. And there's an article in the New York Times today basically there's questioning, like, should he have weighed in on the Horowitz report? And attorney Kevin O'Connor, you might know him, he's of Connecticut, he said it's fair to characterize what John Durham did as unusual in terms of his past practice. And I don't know what the rationale was, but I know John well enough to know he did it because he, not the AG or anyone else, thought he had an obligation to. And this was when Durham basically said, I don't necessarily agree, or I don't agree with the conclusions of the Horowitz report. He wanted to get that out there. Your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think prosecutors are in a tough spot. You want to maintain the confidentiality of your investigation, but you can't allow something that's going to persuade the public to be imprinted in their consciousness before you issue your report. So, I mean, it's a close call. Keep in mind, Horowitz, Barr, and Durham, what they're saying, the difference in what they're saying is measured in inches and not yards. I think Horowitz is saying you had enough to start a full counterintelligence investigation. This conversation in a bar was enough, as low as it was. Durham is saying it was enough to start a limited investigation, but not the full investigation. And Barr is saying, I'm not even sure it was enough to do that. But keep in mind, Dana, this is a drunken conversation in a bar. The threshold to start an investigation is exceedingly low. These three guys, all of whom I have respect for, are just viewing it a little bit differently on whether or not that paucity of evidence was enough to do what they did. And
believe it or not, I actually understood what you meant about being measured in inches and not yards. It is football season after all, and I saw some of that yesterday. Trey Gowdy, thank you, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you and Peter and Jasper, too.
Thank you. Jasper appreciates it. Bye-bye.